On this episode of the Mad Rush podcast.
To truly be financially successful, you have to know what your core values are, what your rock is, what you're building towards, because otherwise you will just get caught on this hamster wheel of more, because that's how we're wired, humans. We're wired for survival and gather as many acorns as possible, stock them up for winter, and so if we don't check ourselves and if we're not grounded in values, it's so easy to get caught in that hamster wheel.
Welcome to the Mad Rush podcast. I'm Tricia Addicks, the original Sorority Rush consultant. While the stories I have to share are nothing short of astonishing, this podcast goes beyond the wild client tales and sorority life. I'll be engaging with fascinating guests from both within and outside the Greek world, uncovering the surprising connections that bind us all together. Join me for a journey that's as entertaining as it is enlightening. Welcome to Mad Rush. The importance of pivoting is something that I talk about a whole lot in my daily work with clients. And so I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about my morning. So our Wi-Fi is out at our house. So normally my husband can fix that, and that's where my podcast studio is, but he could not today. So I am recording from my dear girl KT's house. And so that is all happened in about 30 minutes that I got here set up, and now I'm here. So, but the reason I made all this effort and pivoted is because I'm super excited about this guest today, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about her, and then we will get into it. So Emily Dayan Hill is a Chartered Financial Analyst. She's a principal and portfolio manager at an investment management firm here in Atlanta. And she has dedicated her career to helping women and organizations achieve their financial goals. So I want to hear this from her about her early career, but we'll get into that. But first, Emily, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. And speaking of pivots, my morning was one of pivoting also, as there is a jackhammer tearing up my driveway today that I did not know was going to start. So,
is that because of the tree that fell?
Yes, Hurricane Helene.
Yes.
We are still dealing with it.
Yes. So my daughter-in-law's family is from Augusta, and Augusta was hit really hard, and they're still dealing with it too. It's no joke. And I don't even know what's going on in Asheville. We have a lot of family and friends there, Asheville, North Carolina, and I know that they are still struggling. So anyway, I would love to hear about you. And so I'll go with another thing that y'all should know. I met Emily, speaking of connections, which is something I always talk about. I met Emily at the Southern Coterie Summit, and I talk about this, and you actually, I think, brought this to my attention. So I was nervous. I went to the Southern Coterie Summit by myself, and I didn't know anybody. And the first morning I woke up and went into this session. It was a lettering session. Is that what it was called, Emily?
Inspirational ink. Yes.
Okay. I knew she would know. And I sat down and I immediately connected with Emily, who was sitting next to me, and someone she had just met, Laura Templin, who has great swimwear, by the way. And it was just an instant connection. So we started a group chat called First Day Besties, and we've kept in touch. And we had lunch recently, and I was like, my audience needs to hear what you have to say. It's very, very important what she's doing or what she does. And so, yeah. So tell me first about your college experience. Hell yeah, damn right.
Hotty toddy. Yes. So I not only went to the University of Mississippi, Ole Miss, but I also grew up in Oxford, Mississippi, which is a very special town if you've been there. But I think what is interesting to talk about here with you, Tricia, is I did not go through Rush. I was not in a sorority. But when we had our lunch, I was talking about my experience at Ole Miss and how so many of my dearest friends from my time in college were in sororities. And it was not the exclusive environment that I would have expected as an outsider. They were the warmest, most welcoming friends in my community, inviting me over for lunch, never making me feel excluded because I wasn't in one sorority or the other. So I had a really special time at Ole Miss, and that was really the beginning of a journey of connection. Connection is so important to me too. And in retrospect, I do have a little bit of regret that I didn't do Greek life at Ole Miss because as I've gotten older, I have realized the importance of community and connection. And I have found myself in these female communities as an adult. The Southern Coterie is a great example, which is where you and I met. Junior League of Atlanta is another example. I am finding that as an adult woman in a male dominated field, as a working mom, having your community of women, let's be honest, having your community of women is so important. And, looking back, I wish I had started that earlier at Ole Miss.
Right. Yeah. So you touched on something there. And I say this to every time we get an Ole Miss client, I say it is a very sweet school. I feel like the kids, the college students, they are very kind. I had a son who went there, and I find that it's sort of going back in time a little bit. So when you were there, it was probably even more like that. I haven't met anybody who has a bad bone in their body there. And Oxford, as you said, is so special. And obviously what I do is help people try to find their community through Greek life. And it's interesting that you felt those connections without it, but it's also interesting that you now recognize the importance of a community in that way. I mean, I'm not saying that the junior league is in that way, but I'm just saying that the importance of community, and that's what I try to get these people to have. My clients, that is. So anyway, so yes. So thank you for that. I love Ole Miss. I love Oxford. Can't say enough great things about it. And that's not surprising that I love you coming out of Ole Miss. But okay, so let's talk about why you're here today. And I think that I'm not going to have much to interject and interrupt. I normally do, but I think that what you have to say is so important. And I would love for you to just take it away.
Well, thank you. And please interject as much as you would like.
I said I wasn't going to, but I always do. So don't kid yourself. I mean, don't let it fool you.
Yeah. So the genesis of this conversation is really the fact that through your work, you are trying to empower young women and build their confidence, and through the vehicle of Rush, really help them develop these internal qualities. It's about so much more than Greek life and going through Rush.
Yes, it is.
And I do the same thing with money. I work professionally as a money manager. And what I have learned very early on in my career, I've been doing this for 11 years now. What I learned very early on in my career is that my finance training, going through the Chartered Financial Analyst program did
Which
not.
I'm interjecting. If y'all don't know what this is, my husband is. I told you. I
I
gave
love
you.
it.
I gave you like 2 minutes, and then I'm interjecting or interrupting. Let's be honest. But my husband is a chartered financial analyst, and y'all, this is a very intense test, and it took him 3 years. He took one level each year, and he studied for a year for each level. So when she says chartered financial analyst, that is no joke. Okay, so yeah, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
Well, it's true. And I did it in 3 years as well, studying for 1 year for each level. But very quickly when I started my career, I realized that training, as good as it is for analytical thinking and quantitative methodology, it did not prepare me for the emotional and psychological complexity of working with real people with real money, because money touches every aspect of our life. And what I have learned in my career is, my clients, when they're coming to me as a financial advisor, they are seeking so much more than just how much can I make their money grow. They're coming to me for advice on many other aspects of life, because money touches so many other aspects of life. Something else I noticed very early on, I started off as my boss's executive assistant. So that's a whole other conversation we can have, is my journey to how I've gotten where I am. But I started off as an executive assistant and then went into client service, went through the CFA program, and now I'm a portfolio manager. But what I realized as an executive assistant, I was calling clients, scheduling meetings, and it became evident very quickly that women were not coming to these meetings. Women would answer the phone when I would call the household, and as soon as I would say, I'm trying to schedule a portfolio review or a financial meeting, can we schedule a time? They would immediately say, oh, my husband handles that. Let me give the phone to him. This was back when landlines were still a big thing. And as I did the CFA program, another observation is that in level 1, you go in this massive venue to take the test, kind of like SAT or ACT. Like there's thousands of people in the room all lined up. Level 1 was about 50-50 men and women taking the test. Level 2, the number of women in the room taking the test significantly dropped to, I would say, about 25%.
Oh, wow.
When I took level 3, it was probably 10% women.
Oh, wow.
And when I finished the CFA program and got my charter, there is a reception and they present you with your charter, kind of like a degree. And out of 50 people in Atlanta who received the charter that year, there was only me and one other woman.
Oh, wow. That's crazy.
It's wild. And so early on in my career, I just had this deep feeling of, women are missing out from this financial conversation. And I don't know why, because with regard to the CFA program, it's not because women aren't passing. There's something else going on that is deterring women from pursuing this field as a career path, but also that is disincentivizing women to participate in those financial conversations. So for several years now, I have dedicated my career to empowering women with their finances. I'm very active on Instagram, just from an educational perspective, and really addressing the psychology of money and the behavior of money. Because at the end of the day, what's most important when working with your money is your behavior. Having a high financial IQ actually does very little for long-term financial success. And I think that is where women get discouraged, because perhaps their family didn't talk about money, or they weren't included in financial conversations. And so,
wait, I'm going to interrupt you again. What is a high financial IQ? What does that mean?
Being extremely financially literate, understanding concepts like compounding and interest rates and
okay.
the amortization table. But here's what I'm saying. You don't have to know about those things to be good with money. Being good with money is just about having certain behaviors. And I can't tell you how many times when I meet with women, when I have conversations with women about money, how many times the first thing that they say is, well, I'm not good with money, or numbers aren't my thing. I hear it almost every single time I talk to a woman. And the reason this matters is because to this day, there is a gender wage gap. And part of that is because women aren't pursuing those higher paying jobs, for example. So 82 cents is what women on average earn for every dollar earned by a man. Women currently only own 30% of world wealth, even though we are 50% of the population. We tend to invest less for some of those confidence reasons that I was mentioning earlier. And because we have, on average, a longer lifespan, those financial disparities compound and get worse over time, so that women are much more likely to be in poverty in old age
Oh,
because they
wow.
they have to make their money stretch so much longer, because on average we live longer than men. And so often I have seen situations, very sad, where a husband dies and suddenly the widow is responsible for the finances and she has been left in the dark about it. And in what's already an extremely difficult period in life, she also has this additional financial burden and trying to understand, where are their assets, where are their various accounts, who's responsible for what bills do they need to pay from what account. And so everything I do is just trying to take the industry a step closer to serving women and their money in a way that actually resonates with how women experience money, so that women feel more invited to the conversation and honestly excited to participate in the conversation.
Wow, that's very cool. And I have had some friends, and I remember when my dad died, you know, there's a lot there's a lot there that my mom didn't know, and it was a very difficult time, like you said, and trying to figure that out. I remember, I'm not going to say the company, but it was 3 days after my dad died, and we got a call from his financial broker. And when I answered the phone and I said, he died, they were like, oh, well, we're going to have to figure out something else to do because your mom can't handle this. This person said that.
Oh my
And
gosh.
my mom is Mensa. She's smart. Like she is, but she didn't do that. And it was very condescending. I made her switch brokers because I was like, what in the world are you saying? Like, but yeah, it was very much like, okay, well, she's screwed because he died. And like I said, she was really smart, is really smart, but it was just not, like you said, she wasn't at the table. So,
Well, that is such a devastating story. And something I want to point out is research shows that when men and women self report their financial knowledge, women report that they have less financial knowledge, that they have less financial confidence. But when they are tested on financial concepts, women perform just as well
oh,
as
wow.
men. So women know we're 1000% capable.
So why do you think this is such a hard topic, or why do you think this is?
So, my theory is that the financial services industry does not talk about money in a way that resonates with how women experience money in their lives. And I will give you an example. One of my favorite things to do on Instagram is to poll the audience, or when I'm doing presentations or public speaking, I like to poll the audience. And what I like to ask is, what words describe financial success to you? Like, what does financial success look like to you? And I noticed a very interesting trend, which is men tend to respond with words like net worth, profit, liquidity, return on investment. Women tend to respond with words like peace of mind, confidence, generosity, taking care of my family. So, on the one hand, men view financial success as something that is very external and very measurable, which is exactly how the financial industry is built. It's about, what return can you get on an investment, for example. Whereas women, financial success is felt internally and is very, very hard to measure. And the financial industry really is not talking about money in that way. So I think they are having a conversation in a language that is simply, it just does not resonate with women, because women, care about the confidence and taking care of their family. And of course, return on investment plays a role in being able to provide for your family or give your children opportunities or things like that. But the way women experience it and think about it and want to talk about it is not through these financial metrics and quantitative jargon, but instead through how does it apply to my real life? And that's what I mean when I say that my training did not prepare me for the emotional and psychological complexity of working with real people with real money, because money is complicated. I mean, it is completely normal for money to be stressful, and like our brains are not wired for it. So I think this is my soapbox. The financial industry just needs to completely redo how it talks about money.
Well, you're at the forefront of that. So.
To include 50% of the population that currently feels left out.
Well, and it's interesting. I'm listening to you and I'm thinking about all the conversations I have with people when they want to sign up for our services. And our services, they're all encompassing. They are unlimited. So, and they go on for months and months. So they're expensive. And there are a lot of reasons for that. But I normally talk to, I'd say 99% of the time, I talk to the mom of the girl first. And then they understand the importance of preparation and the confidence and all of that stuff. Confidence is resonating with me in everything you're saying, because confidence is what makes or breaks you in any situation, I believe. But so I talked to these women, and then they are, and I'm very much a partner with my husband in our finances. So I'm not, whatever, doesn't matter. But I'm not saying that they shouldn't talk to their husbands, but it's a very different conversation that I have when I always say, look, well, I'm happy to talk to him. And it's a very different conversation. The moms are like, I just want my daughters to find their place. And that is, I know how the men feel, but that's not how they're talking about it. They're like, they want some sort of guarantee. They want to
What are we going to get out of this?
What is our return on investment? What's our ROI? And I that's a conversation I have pretty much every day. And so it's really resonating with me, because at least the difference that you're pointing out in these conversations. And it's very glaring in my world too, because the emotions are really high and the stakes are high. And it's important that these young women find their their community. It's everything to them. And I do think the dads recognize that, but the conversations are very different about money, about paying for us. So,
I would have never expected to be on a podcast about sorority rush, but
not many people, just so you know, not many people are. When I this is a common theme for most people. I'll say, I think you would be a great guest on Mad Rush. And they're like, huh? Can you explain? Can you explain? And even people who are really like in my wheelhouse, my field, they're always like, why would I be on this podcast? And I'm like, because we're trying to empower women. We're trying to give them confidence. And, and that is all, but So
that's exactly what I was going to say, though, is that's what drew me to you and to speaking here, but especially our friendship is we're trying to do the same thing.
Right.
Yes, there is an outcome. You're trying to help people attain an outcome. But the real result is internal. It's that confidence.
Yes.
It's those qualities and characteristics, that growth. And that is impossible to measure or to quantify.
Right. And that is, I did have a conversation with a husband and a wife. I guess it was last week, and they got it in a way that it made me so happy, because the dad was like, you know what? Obviously the goal is for our daughter to get into a sorority, but what we're paying for is these skills and the confidence. And I was like, oh, because
Yes.
I mean, obviously the goal, I wouldn't have a business if we weren't successful in that goal, but in that ultimate goal. But my personal goal for these clients and for the people I talk to is to give them the courage and the confidence to deal with rejection and to figure out a way to pivot, like I was talking about earlier, and to have the confidence in themselves, which is exactly what you're doing. And so, yes, the ultimate goal, I think, is, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I know you have compliance things, so if I'm saying something wrong, just ignore me. But like, obviously, it's to build wealth, the ultimate goal, maybe. But having women have the power and the confidence is the byproduct of that. Is that fair? Is that fair to say?
Yeah. My goal is for my clients to live the life they want to live. I really view my work almost as a lifestyle, a business.
Right.
I want to empower my clients to live the life they want to live. And there is the acknowledgement that you need money to do that. It is an inherent fact of life. You're not going to get away with it. So what can we do to position your assets, your portfolio in a way to reach those outcomes so that you can do the things that you want to do in your life?
Right. I used to say to my husband, and this really has nothing to do with anything, but he is in the financial world. And I used to say to him all the time, I don't care. I mean, obviously I want to live in a certain way, but what I want is for you to be able to be at our kids' football games and their lacrosse games. And for him, because I mean, it was so important to him. He's a great dad. And I was like, that is, what he does, he could have had stratospheric wealth. I think I'm not speaking for him, but at the cost of a lifestyle that we as a couple decided we did not want to. I mean, I'm not at all saying anything about our financial health or wellness or anything. I'm just saying that was my philosophy. I'm not getting into whether that was what happened or not, but it's just, that was so important to us. And so having the tools to do that without like being gone all the time, I feel like that was really important to us.
You're touching on something I think is critical for financial success. And I know it's something really important to you in your work, which is knowing what your core values are.
Oh, yeah.
Because money, again, our brains are not wired to be good with money.
Right.
We can talk more about that if you want, but money makes us emotional because our brains are not wired to deal with the uncertainty that money presents. And money is a human invention and is therefore inherently uncertain.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
That's a whole thing. And so I think to truly be financially successful, you have to know what your core values are, what your rock is, what you're building towards, because otherwise you will just get caught on this hamster wheel of more, 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 because that's how we're wired, humans. We're wired for survival and gather as many acorns as possible, stock them up for winter, and so if we don't check ourselves and if we're not grounded in values, it's so easy to get caught in that hamster wheel. And so I think the fact that you were having those conversations with your husband early on in your family life, and this is the kind of life we want to have,
Right.
and then adapting the goals around that to create that life rather than chasing the goals and then having the life be the afterthought.
Right. Yeah. And you said that much better than I did. I just always felt really strongly for him because that's what I was doing. But I felt very strongly for him that he would be not happy if he weren't the guy, coaching the little league and then being at their games when they got older and all that. So that's kind of cool. But you said it much better. So why do you think? All right. Well, so let's back up. You said you were talking about brain science. What was that? Brain science on money.
The psychology of money is a developing field. So there's not a ton of research. I would say it's probably been in the last 2 decades where this field has really grown, but research takes a long time. So there's still so much that we're learning about the human brain. But I am personally interested in psychology and behavior science and why are we the way that we are with our money? Because time and time again, humans prove themselves to be quite irrational when it comes to financial decision making. So why is that? And I have an industry friend who actually lives here in Atlanta. His name is Dr. Daniel Crosby, and he's a psychologist, but he researches the psychology of money. And he summarizes it in a way that I am going to use because it is so easy to understand, which is the brain is old, the brain is impatient, and the brain is hungry. So the brain is old. The brain has not changed in the last 150,000 years. So think about what humans were doing back then. We were cave people. And yet the modern financial monetary system was invented 400 years ago and is constantly and was constantly evolving. It is constantly evolving. There's constantly new asset classes to invest in. The stock market is constantly going up and down and changing every day. Economic policy is constantly changing. And so, back then when the human brain formed into its modern version, we were not, as humans, having to deal with such constant change every second of the day. And with money, money honestly didn't even exist back then. Second, the brain is impatient. So back to humans being wired for survival. And one of those instincts is instant gratification. We want more, and we want to enjoy it right now. So we are not wired for delayed gratification.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm definitely not wired for that.
And long-term financial success requires delayed gratification where you are choosing to set aside a little bit today for some unknown future, saving your money and investing it so that you can retire, for example. That is something that is very unnatural for the human brain. We are not wired to conceive of that sort of delayed gratification. And then lastly, the brain is hungry. So the brain accounts for about 2% of our body weight, but it consumes 25% of our calories. So what that means is to conserve energy, the brain is constantly looking for shortcuts in decision making, which leads to many different biases when it comes to all aspects of life, but especially when making decisions about money. An example of just how irrational the brain is in this behavioral science research, there's an experiment called the needle experiment. And basically, researchers took many people who have needle phobia and said, okay, you're going to get a shot today, and there's 3 needles: a small needle, a medium needle, or a large needle. You can choose to get a shot with a large needle, or you can spin a wheel and leave it up to chance whether you get a shot with a small, medium, or large needle. And guess what? Most of these people who have needle phobia chose to get a shot with the largest needle simply because they were so uncomfortable with the uncertainty of not knowing which needle
Oh, wow.
they were going to get a shot with. So to me, that experiment totally captures how the brain is irrational. And so just take that and apply it to all the decisions that we're making with money and spending, and honestly, every aspect of life. And so, yeah, all that to say, the brain is not wired to be good with money, which is why we need to be proactive in developing our money relationship, personal, like our personal relationship with money, understanding what our own default behavior is. How you were raised with money greatly influences how you are with money. If you grew up in poverty, even if you hit the jackpot as an adult, it is very hard to overcome that scarcity mindset. How your parents talked about money shapes how you feel about money, and sometimes that can lead to bad behavior with money, poor decisions with money. And so money is something that we all need to be proactive in developing our relationship with it, and realizing that it has nothing to do with IQ or intelligence. Everybody can be good with money by just making good decisions in terms of delayed gratification, saving, investing consistently, not having too much debt. Like, you don't need to understand the ins and outs of those, but you just need to adopt some positive financial behaviors and you will be just fine.
Wow. Have you ever thought about writing a book? Like, I'm serious.
I would love to write a book. It is on my bucket list.
Gotcha. Okay. So can you give us, we're getting close to being out of time, but can you give us some like ways to start achieving financial wellness, or, start achieving what you're saying we are not achieving?
So absolutely. I think we're going to have a link in the show notes for a money date guide.
Yes, we are.
My money date guide is a wonderful workbook, basically, instruction guide on how to initiate that relationship in your personal money life.
Oh, wow.
And I talk about
Thank you. That's very generous of you to share that.
Yeah, no, it's so important, and it's something everyone can do. And what I mean by a money date is, just like any other relationship, you have to cultivate it, you have to nurture it. A money date is a date with yourself, or you can have it with your spouse or an accountability partner. But it's a regular time on your calendar where you're going to sit down and just look at your finances. And in the money date guide, I give step by step, what to include in a money date. And the first few times you do it, it might take a little bit of time because you're having to log in and do the double authentication and get your passwords, all of that. But once you get the hang of it, and because it becomes a consistent part of your routine, when I do my money date, it is 15 minutes tops. I do it on the 1st and 15th of every month. I just check in with my accounts. I check in with my goals for each of those accounts. Are there any actions that need to happen? For example, not all IRAs, retirement accounts, automatically invest when you contribute. So check to make sure when you've contributed money that it's being invested how it should be invested. I've heard stories from friends where it was not being invested and several years went by of just cash accumulating, but not participating in investment growth because they hadn't set up the automated investments. So it's just a regular check-in, truly a micro habit to familiarize yourself with your financial situation so that at any given time, you know exactly where you stand financially. You will gain confidence in the knowledge of knowing where you stand financially. And then when those curveballs do happen, because financial curveballs are going to happen, and because you are doing consistent money dates, it's not going to completely derail you.
So the knowledge of where you stand financially and
Yeah, so doing a money check in regularly, it becomes such a part of your routine that it really grows your financial confidence, knowing where you stand financially at any given moment in time. And that way, when the financial curveballs happen, which curveballs are going to happen, life is unpredictable, money is unpredictable. Things are going to happen that you don't expect, but because you are doing regular money dates, it's not going to completely derail you because you already know what your goals are and what you're doing to get there and what you have available and how to pivot, going back to that word pivot. So to me, a money date is an immediate activity any woman can start doing to grow that financial confidence muscle. And it's truly amazing the stories I hear from women who come to me saying, I've started doing my money date, my money check-in, and I feel so much more empowered. I've opened this account, I've moved money here, I'm reaching my goals, I'm paying off this debt. It has really been life-changing for friends of mine who have started doing it. And so, yeah, in the show notes, we will have the money date guide for all of your listeners.
that's amazing. And I can't wait to download it. I've already got it. Um, okay. So thank you for that. And we will also have in the show notes all the ways you can get in contact with her. I think that what she's saying is so important, and it goes back to confidence. And so I am hoping that you guys know that she's out there. She's a resource for you, and she's clearly very smart. So, okay, we got to do it. Hashtag OOTD, Bama Rush documentary or Bama Rush talk, popularize that for outfit of the day. But I want to know what your hashtag OOTD observation of the day is. And I feel sure, y'all, she did her homework.
I did do my homework. I feel very passionate about this. My hashtag observation of the day is that there are not enough women in wealth management. So talking about the Chartered Financial Analyst program, as I mentioned, women declined throughout the 3 years of that program when I was doing it. Currently, only 18% of CFA charter holders are women.
Oh,
That
wow.
is abysmal.
Yeah.
And here is what I want to say, especially to the young women who are listening or the people who are listening who have young women in their lives. Wealth management, financial advising is an incredible field for women to work in, to have work-life balance if having a family is something a woman wants. I have 2 children. I have a wonderful work-life balance, and you can get paid a ton of money. You can be really successful. When I was in college, I thought if you studied finance, the only option was to do investment banking and work around the clock and be miserable. And I just want to say it does not have to be that way. We need more women in wealth management because wealth management is about so much more than money. Going back to what I said, money touches all aspects of life. And so my work is so much more than money. It's about relationships. It's about trust. It's about counseling my clients. And I think
Women are really good at that.
Women have inherent skills that are really good at that. So observation of the day, not enough women in this field. It's an incredible field for women to go into.
And so if a listener wants to talk about that, would you be willing to have them reach out to you on Instagram or whatever and just answer questions?
Absolutely.
That's really amazing. And that's generous too. I know that takes a lot of time. So yeah, that's kind of cool. So I think that's a great observation of the day. And everything you said is just really, really important. Like I said in the beginning, and I'm so grateful you were here, and I'm grateful that we have this connection.
Thank you so much for having me. This was really a very enjoyable conversation for me.
Welcome to Time Out with Tricia. Because can you really give advice if you don't speak about yourself in the third person? I don't think so. This is exactly how I speak to my clients. The good, the bad, and the ugly. So listen to me. I know what I'm talking about. Now let's get into it. So, Emily Dayan Hill, that was really, really amazing. And I feel like it resonates so much. You know, these timeouts with Tricia are usually rush specific. And the thing that I want to reiterate here is the confidence. So I had a conversation this past weekend with a bunch of young women, and we were talking about how there's such a misconception that you have to look a certain way to succeed in rush. You know, the skinny blonde things that you see on TikTok or in movies. And it's about so much more than that. It really is about gaining confidence and projecting confidence. And to do that, and I know if you've listened to this, you've heard me say this before a gazillion times, but that is through intentionally preparing for rush so that you're able to block out all the noise and be confident. So this is kind of just a little part of it, but I don't think I've addressed it before. And I'm talking about clothing now. So I'm going to give you 3 things that you should do. You should pack a separate garment bag for each outfit. Those are available on Amazon, and they're not very expensive, but having your look head to toe, including shoes and accessories, is really important so that you're not worrying about it during rush. Okay, and wear comfortable rush-appropriate shoes that you can walk in for rounds up until the last one when you can go all out because you're not walking very much. But if you really have your heart set on feel great in some not so comfortable shoes, then throw a pair of flip-flops in your rush bag. And you can walk from house to house in those and then throw on the ones that make you feel really confident. And let your accessories make a statement about you and your personality without going overboard. I had a client once who wanted to know if she should wear themed jewelry throughout the week so people would remember her as the banana girl. And I was like, that's a very bad idea. You should not wear banana earrings, banana necklace, and banana clothes. What should make you stick out and people remember is your engaging personality. So, and then 3 things not to do is do not drop loads of money on cool brands. It is not about what brand you're wearing. Do not squeeze yourself into shapewear if it makes you feel uncomfortable, because this story of my life, shapewear can make you think about only shapewear, not getting to know the people you're talking to. And do not try a new hair or makeup look the morning of rush. You will hopefully have figured this out, what your makeup plan is and your hair plan. Don't switch it up the first morning or any morning of rush, because if that goes awry, then that's what you're going to be thinking about. And that's it for Time Out with Tricia. We'll see you on another episode of the Mad Rush Podcast. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Mad Rush Podcast. If you are enjoying this podcast, please consider leaving us a 5-star review. For additional Rush tips, updates, and more, please follow me on Instagram at Rush with Confidence. If you would like to reach out to us or for more information, please email info@madrushpod.com. This podcast is produced by Collier Landry and Don't Touch My Radio. Copyright Tricia Addicks.